Well, good afternoon. I wanted to take this opportunity to update you on where we are with relationship to a word you may have received regarding Flex Alert that was recently put out, something very familiar to many of us here in California and increasingly all across the western United States. Let me begin, though, by trying to contextualize the moment we're living in. For years and years and years, and I would put this in global terms, we, all of us, have been trying to outrun Mother Nature. But it's pretty clear that Mother Nature has outrun us. The reality is we're living in an era of extremes, extreme heat, extreme drought, and with the flooding that we're experiencing around the globe, just ask folks in Missouri, in Kentucky, or in Pakistan, the extreme floods as a consequence of Mother Nature's fury. The hots are getting a lot hotter. The dries are getting a lot drier. We're living again in an age of extremes. I don't have to explain that to anybody living here, in particular in California. The drought, 7 of the last 10 years that we have experienced is self-evident. The challenges now that present themselves anew across the western United States as we try to grapple with water deliveries that we've come accustomed to for generations in the Colorado River only punctuate the new reality. Just ask folks. I was taking a look the other day of what was going on in Europe and what's going on in the Rhine River basin, and the fact these larger rivers are no longer navigable. The Yangtze River in China. Look what's happening in China as it relates to the extreme heat and the extreme weather. Challenges faced even in other parts of this country, notably Texas last year, and the tragic loss of hundreds of lives associated with blackouts and grid reliability. That's been expressed, I think, by 3 emergency proclamations in Texas over the last number of months, expressing itself in extreme terms. That's the world we're living in. None of that, again, necessarily surprises any of you. The question is, what are we going to do about it? How can we maintain our resilient mindset? How can we work our way through these things? And how can we thrive, not just survive, in an era of such extremes? And that's the purpose of today's briefing. I wanted to update you on where we are and where we're going. But one thing I don't need to remind you of as you walk out your door today on your way to work, well, how hot it's gotten. Take a look at your 5-day forecast. We are looking at yet another heat dome. Another heat wave is often referred to here in the western United States, and notably here in California. Between now and next Wednesday, we're going to be experiencing a prolonged heat moment. We're going to have opportunity now in the next number of days to experience, many of us, what many have not experienced back to back to back to back to back, and that's triple-digit weather. I was taking a look as I was walking in at how hot it was in one part of California, Death Valley. They will look to experience in the next hour or two 120-degree temperatures, projected to be as high as 122 in California and Death Valley tomorrow. We are anticipating this extreme heat to be a length and duration the likes of which we haven't experienced in some time. Yes, we're used to record-breaking temperatures, maybe a day or two more episodic, but this is an extended period. And as a consequence, it's going to require us to extend our thinking and our imagination in terms of working together to keep people healthy. And I want to talk about that, keep people safe, and to make sure that we are working to address our energy needs and energy reliability. Because at the end of the day, Mother Nature has presented itself in this context. Energy reliability becomes more and more challenging. Energy reliability becomes more and more stressed because demand increases. At the same time, supply decreases. Let me be more specific. We've talked often about the drought here in the state of California. Last year, we experienced something related to the drought we had never experienced in the history of this state. One of our largest sources of hydroelectricity in the state of California, at the Orville Dam, the Hyatt power plant had to be shut down, first time in history. That's a 925 megawatt system. We lost about 600 plus megawatts just from shutting down that hydroelectric source. as a consequence not only of that example last year, we see other examples where hydroelectricity is not as reliable as a consequence of this drought and the lower reservoirs we're seeing across the western United States and certainly here in California. So we're losing megawatts. Mega drought means less megawatts. So on a supply side, we're challenged by these extremes, and on a demand side, not surprisingly, people are turning up the AC. People understandably are trying to escape the heat. And so we have to address that twin challenge anew. And that's why you heard about perhaps that Flex Alert that was put out earlier today by the ISO, which is the California Independent System Operator. Something, just fancy way of saying those are the folks that, well, keep the lights on. And the Flex Alert just asks you if you can do a little bit more. We voluntarily ask you to do a little bit more to help us get through the next week or so, to turn, interestingly, up a little bit the thermostat at home to 78 degrees. Try to pre-cool earlier in the day the home. Try not to use too much electricity in those key hours, and the key hours are between 4 p.m. and 9 p.m. In the evening. Try to reduce your consumption to the extent possible. If you're not home, it's a holiday weekend, Labor Day weekend, and you're out enjoying yourself, we encourage you, before you leave home, if you can turn those thermostats up to 85 degrees. That would also help reduce demand, particularly with so many of the automatic thermostats that we all have and enjoy. We want to make sure, again, we're not using unnecessarily and consuming unnecessarily too much electricity. So Flex Alert's just an opportunity to elevate a consciousness for all of us to prepare to enter into this week and to work our way through what will be perhaps the most challenging 2 days, and that's Sunday and Monday, this coming Sunday and Monday, where we are anticipating, based on current projections, this will change on a daily basis, a little over 48,000, as much as 48,200, 48,500 megawatts of consumption. Now, if you're like me, that means everything and nothing. It just means the highest needs in terms of consumption year to date. And it puts us in a position where we have some vulnerabilities. And that means we need to do things a little bit differently, not just on the demand side to meet that potential peak, particularly coming into this weekend, Sunday and Monday, but also on the supply side. And that's why just a few moments ago, I signed an executive order, something very familiar to all of us here in California. We did it last year and the year before. As I said, many other states offering similar approach to allow us a little bit more flexibility across the spectrum in terms of procuring supply at the same time to prepare. So demand response, try to get the reduction that you're accustomed to and have been so successful at in the past, and address the supply needs by creating some more flexibility pursuant to this emergency order that would allow us to diversify our sources and allow, for example, some short-term mitigation in terms of consumption along our ports. A good example of that would be a lot of ships that are along our ports. If they can keep their engines on as opposed to using shoreside power, that would reduce demand on the entire grid. We've been working with businesses in our industrial sector who've been incredible partners in the past to work to reduce their demand and as well in the next coming days, and we'll continue to work closely with them as they work our way through this. You know, briefly, I just want to go back. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. And go back to August of 2020. You may recall that was a challenging period. A lot of what you're hearing me say today was said in August of 2020. We had some short-term challenges. We had a few minutes there where we had to make some very difficult decisions, and it required us to think completely differently. And we did a root cause analysis of what led to some of those short-term issues in August of 2020. And it led us to take a look across a spectrum. Number one, how can we coordinate a lot better with the ISO, the Independent System Operator, and our other members of our regulatory agencies and energy agencies, from the CPUC, the California Public Utilities Commission, the CEC, which is the California Energy Commission, to make sure that we're more collaborative in terms of our approach, again, both on procurement, demand side, supply side, and the like. We have since taken, since July, in fact, of August 2020, 161 actions. We have initiated or completed 161 projects and procured an unprecedented number of megawatts for this state. So much so that we broke records last year in terms of total procurement. Some 11,500 megawatts were procured. Recently, working collaboratively with the legislature, we were able to break through another huge issue that was facing us, and that was addressing the issue of time to project delivery. Now, you've all heard, particularly in this room, the challenges we've had as it relates to the pandemic and the impact that's had on supply chain and issues related to tariffs and the like. And, you know, at the end of the day, you don't want to hear me talk more about that. What are we going to do about that? We've had to work around that. And one of the significant action items that we took this year in particular as part of the after-action report and the recommendations that were made as it relates to the impacts of August 2020 was changing our procurement strategies, meaning our permitting to get these projects, these renewable projects, moving. We've had a lot of success in that space. We were able to actually get the language. We were able to actually get an effort that moves the permitting to a maximum of 270 days, basically trying to create certainty in a process that, no exaggeration, in the past has taken upwards of 6 years, which is ridiculous and unacceptable, particularly in the world we're living in. So this notion of changing permitting, changing the processing to get these projects up, we took to heart as part of our root cause analysis in that after-action report, and working with the legislature, we were able to move in a meaningful and historic way. Accordingly, we recognized that we needed to do more in terms of de-risking our transition to green energy. And don't think for a second, I'll talk more about that in a moment, that we are not doing anything except accelerating. I mentioned what we're doing on permitting and procurement, accelerating that transition to low carbon, renewable sources of energy. But one of the areas we wanted to advance was a de-risking strategy to create a larger buffer so that we're not doing this on an annual basis. And we worked with the legislature, and we were able to move through, just in June, this was a process, took about 6 months working through the budget process, to get $4.2 billion to move an effort to be able to put together a capacity to break glass on some 4,000 or so megawatts. Interestingly and importantly, in relationship to the moment we're in, that was done in June. Already, we've been able to pull in to our portfolio 630 megawatts. It actually has exceeded by 130 megawatts our short-term goal. So that $4.2 billion already in use. By 2024, we should have all those 4,000 megawatts ready to go. And that's through a spectrum of strategies as it relates to the strategic reserve. We put out an energy plan, and part of the de-risking on the energy plan complements what you may have been hearing about as it relates to our climate plan. And forgive me, there are many components here that all have to come together. California put forth, I was very proud to introduce over the last number of years, a $53.9 billion climate plan. Now, as I speak, the legislature, this is the last day of the legislative session, it ends this evening, they are working to advance 3 critical efforts, part of our energy plan and part of our climate plan. An additional $1 billion that they will be putting forward, they're debating it as we speak. We'll hopefully get it done this evening. An additional $1 billion for clean energy projects, and appropriately, under the circumstances, $800 million for extreme heat mitigation. We must do better on data collection, cooling centers. We have a few $100 million for cooling centers, and strategies for urban greening, weatherization, and the like. $800 million in that package and strategy being discussed today, should be done tonight. Additional $1 billion, again, in clean energy projects, and extending the life in terms of a de-risking strategy to accelerate our transition of Diablo Canyon nuclear plant. And this is critical in the context of making sure we have energy reliability going forward. Again, part of our energy plan, and yes, part of our climate plan, because that energy does not produce greenhouse gases. That energy provides baseload and reliability and affordability that will complement and allow us to stack all of the green energy that we're bringing online at record rates. And if you think I'm overstating that, let me give you one demonstrable example. Since 2020, in about 2.5 years, to be fair, slightly longer bracketed period, we have brought online from 200 megawatts of battery storage. Storage is critical. Solar and wind are wonderful. Self-evidently, we create an abundance of solar in the peak part of the day, but around 4 or 5 in the afternoon, that's solar because the sun goes down. All of a sudden, that energy diminishes. If we can store that energy during the peak time, we can then utilize that energy in the off-peak time. And that's why battery storage is key to this transition. We have taken from 200 megawatts 2.5 years ago in battery storage. This is unprecedented in California's history. I don't know many other jurisdictions that have done more in a shorter period of time, to 4,000 megawatts of battery storage today. 200 to 4,000 just in the last few years, and we're just winding up. That's, again, part of this transition, but it's a foundational part. But getting Diablo Canyon extended, just extending its life for a short period of time, will provide us the capacity to de-risk, the capacity to stack all of these renewables, to get the battery storage, deal with these supply chain issues, and move forward with our new strategies to fast-track projects and permitting and create some certainty for investors in this space. So again, all part of the energy plan, all part of the package around the climate plan that the legislature is working on today, all critical components, not only to address the immediacy of the moment, but address the future so that we can future-proof California. This is a state that leads. We're on the leading edge, clearly, of the impacts of climate change, but we're also on the leading edge. No other state in the country, I would argue fewer jurisdictions, if any, in the world, doing more in the green energy space, changing the way we produce and consume energy and decarbonizing not just our economy, but cleaning up our air and making California healthier and more resilient across the spectrum. Don't think for a second, as I noted a moment ago, coming back to this, that we're going to de-escalate our commitment to that transition. Quite the contrary. And for those with respect that say that we have a flex alert because of those policies, I would just offer some consideration. It was worth reading, and I encourage those that are out there as critics of California's energy policies, particularly those that are fully owned subsidiaries of oil interests and big energy interests in the fossil sector, to consider the following. Just one example. And I don't mean this to demean, because I recognize intimately the stresses that many other jurisdictions are facing as it relates to extreme heat and extreme drought. I'm deeply empathetic to the challenges they face. But put in perspective, year to date, in the state of Texas, year to date, they have consumed some 22.9 million tons of coal, polluting the planet, making conditions worse, impacting climate, exacerbating the very conditions they're trying to mitigate in terms of their energy reliability, versus California that has consumed just 18,000. 22.9 million tons versus California's 18,000, yet they've offered 3 proclamations of emergency. And we all know what happened in 2021, tragically, in that state as it relates to days and days where up to 10 million people did not have access to electricity, and the impact that had on lives lost and up to $130 billion of economic damage. Again, I'm not trying to cast aspersions, but I am trying to cast a deeper understanding of the contrast between a deregulated market that still relies on dirty energy and coal, yet still faces the challenges of extreme heat, and the consequences of Mother Nature's fury. I've said it many times. It's probably best and first said by Rob Watson. You know, there's no more powerful force on the planet than Mother Nature. She bats last, she bats 1,000. She's nothing more than this: chemistry, biology, and physics. We recognize her fury in California with extreme heat, extreme drought, wildfires, knock on wood, and all the challenges that we're facing. But we face them head on with the resiliency and mindset that really distinguishes the greatness of our state, with the innovative and entrepreneurial spirit that is a point of true, deep pride, recognizing not only we can embrace the transition, but we can dominate in clean energy, low carbon, green growth. We can dominate in the economic opportunities that this moment presents themselves as long as we stay strong and we stand firm in terms of advancing these policies and principles well into the future. I'm more resolved than ever. I'm more enthusiastic about the future than I've ever been. I mean that. And I'm so grateful for the members of the California legislature for everything they've done in this historic package, this climate package, the work they'll do today to help us de-risk and get over the finish line, the remaining components of our energy plan and our climate package. And I look forward to making sure these investments are made in real time. Let us work together with the sense of purpose that we often always do to meet this challenge as it relates to energy reliability this next week head on. Again, no one denies heat waves have existed long before climate change, but their duration and their intensity have never been more challenging. And again, you look at that 5-day forecast, I think you know what I mean. So stay safe, hydrate, make sure you're taking care of your loved ones, particularly seniors. Please take a look, if you would like, on these Flex Alerts. We have a website, flexalert.org, for more information about how you can do your part, just a little bit to contribute, as we've done in the past. We've headed these issues off in the past. We did so last year quite successfully. I'm confident we'll do it again this year and this week. And thank you for the opportunity and privilege of your time and affording me the opportunity to update you on the executive order we put out here today and the Flex Alert that was put out by ISO earlier in the day. Take care, everybody.